Good morning. It's another Tuesday and time for another episode of Existential Ambiguity. We're going to be really existentially ambiguous this morning.
Why?
Well, because I don't know what we're going to talk about.
Oh.
No, we're going to talk about feeling some more, but we're going to talk about it from the point of view of contact.
Feeling arises out of contact, right?
Right. In the Paticca-samuppada, the dependent origination, contact occurs when a sense object, and a feeling come together. Those three are necessary to have contact.
I thought feeling was later.
No.
And
it's dependent on sense consciousness.
sense consciousness?
Mm-hmm. The six sense bases, in other words.
The sense organs?
And when those organs come into contact with their objects.
And consciousness.
Consciousness. Those three things is called contact. Then feeling is generated out of that. That's a computation or consideration.
Yes.
That I like this, I don't like this, or I don't care.
First you have the bodily feeling, which is either pleasant or painful, unpleasant. And then you have mental feelings, which is an interpretation of the meaning of this contact.
Right, and that's either pleasurable or displeasurable or don't care. Neutral. So I'm going to read from Wetimuni's great book, Buddha's Teaching and the Ambiguity of Existence here, chapter 5. I'm going to take up from where we left off last time. Feeling can be classified in other ways, depending on the point of view. A very important classification is one based on the ways in which feeling arises. This is given as follows. And what, monks, is feeling? It is these 6 bodies of feeling. Feeling sprung from contact with the eye, feeling sprung from contact with the ear, feeling sprung from contact with the nose, feeling sprung from contact with the tongue, feeling sprung from contact with the body, feeling sprung from contact with the mind. This, monks, is called feeling.
And then, when you read those things, it's really helpful to try to see it in your own experience as you hear it.
Yes. So feeling springs from contact. That's why the sutta is called the Upadana Paripavata. Upadana means clinging. And paripavata means that which springs from, or that which comes from, that which comes out of. So this is called contact, phassa. Contact is important because without it, there can be no experience. If the senses don't contact their objects, then there's nothing to experience. Further, contact helps us distinguish between feeling and perception. Contact is defined in the suttas as follows. In dependence on eye and sights, eye consciousness springs up. The coming together of the three is called contact. In other words, eye, sights, and eye consciousness. The three of them together is contact, phassa. In dependence on ear and sounds, springs up ear consciousness. In dependence on nose and smells, springs up nose consciousness. Independent on tongue and tastes, tongue consciousness. Independence on the body and touches, body consciousness. Independence on the mind and mental images, or ideas springs up mind consciousness. The coming together of the three is called contact. And guess where that's from? The Dukkha Sutta. Because ultimately, all these contacts are suffering. Yet, some of them are perceived as pleasant. Why? Because they're related to I and mine. Okay? So even though contact is always a hassle, contact is always a disturbance, it's an agitation, it destroys our peacefulness.
Yes.
The more contact we have, the less peaceful the mind is, because there are all these sense impressions coming in. But if they're related with I and mind, they're perceived as pleasant, and we want them to continue. So when something is perceived as pleasant, even if it's actually unpleasant, like a physically unpleasant feeling that is perceived as pleasant. What's a good example? Driving a car. Driving a car is a hassle. You have to coordinate your eyes and mind and hands and feet and obey all these rules, and if you don't, some cop is going to pull you over and hassle you and
sit in one position for a long time.
Yeah, on a long drive it gets really boring. So many sufferings, but people are tremendously attached to their cars. They're tremendously into driving around. I remember when I was your age, Sonny, when I was a kid, that was a thing to do. Just get in the car and drive around. You didn't have to go anywhere.
Everyone was just driving.
Yeah, just to drive, just to be in the car and drive around. It's crazy, huh?
It's a pastime.
It's a nonsense thing if you think about it. The car is burning up so much gas and wear and tear on the engine and this and that. And what are you doing? Just driving around. Well,
in idle, you're just curious.
Yeah, you're sitting in the car. You're not really doing it. You could have a better conversation sitting on the couch, But no, we have to go into the car.
Because they don't really have anything to talk about. So the visual...
the point is it's I and mine.
Yeah.
I am in my car. So there's a pleasurable aspect, even though it's actually a waste of time, even though driving is so uncomfortable in so many ways. I don't like to drive at all anymore. I used to love it, because it was I am in control of my car. Nothing makes you feel more like you own something than when you control it, And when you drive, you got this big steering wheel in your hand. It all says control, You're in control of this thing. It weighs like 2 tons, and it's filled with these volatile hydrocarbons that could explode at any moment.
You're even in control of the other people who's in the car.
That's right, if you're the driver. So it's just a whole ego thing, And I don't enjoy it anymore. At all. I don't even like to ride in a car anymore. I mean, because the whole attachment thing and the whole ego thing and the whole identity thing is so bound up with the car, the vehicle, just the way the body is the vehicle. And so people get all identified with the body and tied up with their ego and their sense of identity in the body.
That's also just a vehicle, like you said.
Yeah.
And you have to give up that also.
Yeah, and it's also a hassle. The body is just a hassle. You have to take care of it. Something's always wrong with it. You have to get some medicines or do something else.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
That too. The body's going to die.
You gotta eat.
Yeah. Because it's conditioned. Conditioned existence is always temporary. It always fails at some point, because it's unnatural. Unconditioned is the natural way of being. People talk about natural, and when they talk about it in that way, they mean like a wild animal or something, that with completely uncontrolled senses.
Wild animal is completely conditioned by its context.
That's the point. Yeah, they don't realize that. No. They think natural is good. And maybe in respect to food and stuff like that, natural is better than processed. But as far as being natural, a natural person, a natural man, that was a saying back in the 60s and 70s. That if you're a natural man, you're supposed to be more virile or more something or other. Well, as far as I could see, it just meant that you're more egoistic. You're more attached to your body.
It all depends on your definition of natural, of course.
Or natural, like I said, when it's used in that way, it means like an animal. Okay? When we use it, when we say natural, we mean unconditioned. Okay? Unconditioned means no limitations. Unconditioned existence is natural because it has no limitations. It has no beginning, no end, no form, no shape, no vehicle. Everything is just the way it is, and there's no limitations on it whatsoever. Whereas conditioned existence is limited from the beginning because you have to have a birth.
Can you say that natural is according to the laws of nature? So that you're just observing the laws of nature going on without identifying with it.
Well, so is every animal and plant in the jungle observing the laws of nature.
Animals are identifying with it. They're not observing it. They're in it.
Well, the Buddha certainly had a very clear viewpoint on nature and conditioned existence in general. That's a really interesting question, because when you're in unconditioned consciousness, you see conditioned existence as a kind of death. It looks dark and angular and cramped and uncomfortable and just sort of generally inconvenient and painful. And when you're in conditioned consciousness, unconditioned consciousness is just incomprehensible.
It's boring at best.
Putujana can't even imagine, what it would be like. But someone who is in unconditioned consciousness then can look back at conditional consciousness and say, oh boy, that really sucks. I don't want to go there.
But it's kind of like if you've been slaving on your job the whole day and then you just lay down on your couch without any impressions and you just let everything go.
But can anybody in conditioned consciousness do that for more than a couple of minutes?
No, but at least they can get. It's like just to get the conception of it.
I see. It's like a feeling of relief, like being through a stressful day and then coming home.
Letting go of the burden.
Yeah.
It's like that, but it's with your whole existence.
Yeah. It's 100 times better than that. 1,000 times. Because in a conditioned state of consciousness, no one can remain idle. Either you fall asleep, or you have to turn on the TV or do something. You can't just lie there and enjoy not doing anything, because your sense of existence depends on doing. Doing, being, having.
Those habits that you identify with.
Yeah. And without that, you don't feel like you really exist.
You don't have anything to stand on.
Yeah.
And that's like an unfamiliar experience, but actually if you could get to like that, that's really what we're trying to reach.
I'm getting to like it more and more. To the point where I don't want to go back, At the end of the meditation, it's like, oh boy, do I have to go back into that thing? So anyway, where were we here? Oh yeah. Contact. The 6 sense organs, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, mentioned in the definition that we just read from the Dukkha Sutta, are called the internal bases, ajhatikani ayatanani. The percepts corresponding to those internal sense bases, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and ideas, are called the external bases, bahirani ayatanani. These are things external to the individual, whatever is not one's six-based body. Okay? Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. That covers everything.
That's your whole world.
That's it. And then the external things that we contact are sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and ideas.
It's interesting that they are called percepts.
Yeah.
Are they in the Sanya category then? When you recognize them as the external object as having a quality or as being in a specific category, then they are perceptions. Sanya.
Well, percepts are different from perceptions. Let's get out the dictionary here. A percept is an object of perception, something that is perceived. A mental concept that is developed as a consequence of the process of perception. And perception is the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. The state of being or process of becoming aware of something in such a way. A way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something, a mental impression. So perception is something more developed than a percept. A percept is like immediate experience, the direct sense perception of the thing. And perception is the more developed concept of recognition and evaluation. This is X, and I like X, or I don't like X, or it doesn't matter to me. So perception is, in fact, one of the definitions.
I like or I don't like is Shankara, probably.
Sankhara, yes. Yeah. Because a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something. A mental impression.
It can also be that perception in the Buddhist sense has a broader range of meaning.
Well, I think that's what he's getting at here. To go back a little bit, he says feeling can be classified in other ways depending on the point of view. Okay, anything is like that.
Yeah.
Depending on your point of view, perception could be very narrow, like in the root structure. Perception is simply the recognition of something. And then there's this other process built on top of it of making I and mine. It's like that.
Actually, perception is a part of determinations. The Buddha describes these different determinations, and bodily is in and out breaths. Speech determinations are thinking and pondering because they lead to speech, and mental determinations are perceptions and feelings.
Okay, perceptions, determinations are sometimes called fabrications. Okay, so, of course, yeah.
It's kind of convoluted.
Well, they're all defined in terms of one another. So
yeah,
if you
and they're part of the same thing, really.
Really, they are. We're taking an organic process and we're teasing it apart to get at the anatomy of it.
There are many relations, and it's not like linear or Aristotelian logic.
No, in fact, if we tried to make a diagram of this, we'd go nuts.
Like for example, you're talking about the 5 aggregates, which is form, feeling, perception, determination, and consciousness.
And obviously that overlaps with perceptions and determinations and all these other things.
Yeah, because thinking, feeling, and perception is a part of determination.
So it depends on your point of view. Okay, because they're all defined in terms of one another.
They determine other things. Perception that can determine something. A feeling can determine something.
Right. And it's also, perception is also a higher level, or more developed level of experience than just the simple sense percept.
Yeah. See, contact.
Contact is the percept. I feel something, I hear something, I know something, I see something. Then on top of that is the recognition of it, the evaluation of it, the considerations around it, and so on. Like those are perceptions. a little bit more developed, the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. So percept is the seeing, the hearing, the becoming aware of something, and perception is the ability to do that. See, it's another layer.
Perception is like you distinguish qualities and categories.
And also you activate the senses. You get into the senses, you connect with the senses. That's why there's also this contact is there. Sense consciousness is there. You have to reach out. The senses is
it
actually...
depends on your name and form in the beginning.
Well, yeah, if you think about it from the point of view of unconditioned consciousness, going to experience things through the senses is very unnatural. It requires a specific effort.
Yes.
Back when I was involved with the Vedas, I always used to ponder this problem, that how does the soul interact with the body, because the soul is transcendental and the body is material. They don't really have anything to do with each other. And now we have a similar view. The individual in unconditioned consciousness, the arhat, has to make a definite effort to perceive things through the senses. Otherwise, the tendency is to just bathe and luxuriate in the wonderful unconditioned existence, if you can call it existence. This language is so limited. Anyway,
but he's not even relishing jhanas anymore. He's even beyond the jhanas.
That. Yeah, beyond the jhanas. The arhats go into the jhanas to rest. From what? From having to make the effort of perceiving things through the senses, because that's exhausting when you're coming from that place. Actually, it's exhausting anyway.
Yes.
We just don't realize how exhausting it is because we have nothing to compare it to in ordinary consciousness.
Do it by habit.
Yeah. So, okay. Things that are perceived as their qualities, shape, color, smell, etc., are not entirely dependent on the individual perceiving them. No. That means we get conditioned by these sense objects. We perceive things about them, qualities and so on, that have nothing to do with us.
We can't decide what color we want to have on the wall by our mental speculation. It is the color it is.
How about mauve? Chartreuse. In South India, we were going to rent a house one time. And you're looking at this one house. And this place was like, how can I say? It was like the crazy part of the fun house, the part that's supposed to drive everybody nuts, right? On one wall was red and black stripes, vertical stripes. And on the other wall, there were like these diagonal green, bright green, like day glow green thing, alternating with some brown color, diagonal, and then the ceiling was another color, and the other wall was some other color, and then there was every room was on a different level. None of the rooms were on the same level, so to get from one room to the other, you had to walk up or down. There was no two rooms in the same way, and there was no it didn't seem to have any plan to it. Didn't have any reason for it to be that way. It was just like that because he could make it like that or something. And it was like a madhouse. It was I could imagine if we took this house, we would have all gone crazy, even quicker than we did, because it was like a nut house. It was crazy. So you can create an environment that creates such clashing impressions, such disharmonious qualities, that you automatically would give rise to the same thing
in your mind
by the contact with them.
That kind of illustrates how important association is.
Yeah. If you're in association with good people, then things go so much better.
Context is decisive.
Yes, because it determines the meaning. I love that example. You're driving in your car. Here's another driving story. You're driving in your car, and there's this little old lady in front of you going really slow. And you're like, come on, come on. And then she turns around and you recognize that it's your grandmother. Huh? Took care of you when you were a kid and this and that. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's grandma. The meaning of the experience completely changes. Huh? Or like the story about the kite. There's an essay, a little 2 or 3 paragraph essay about flying a kite, except in the beginning you're not given the title.
So the meaning is not at all clear until you say kite.
The meaning is absolutely indistinguishable. You can't figure out what it's about. It seems to have a whole bunch of contradictory things, And then on the next page you turn it and then you see the same essay with one word changed. The title is there. It says kite. And it's like, oh, of course. Now I understand. And it all falls into place. Huh? All you have to do is change that one word because what? The title of something or the name of something or the identity of something creates the context and the context creates the meaning. Whether you view it as positive or negative or irritating or fun or whatever it is simply determined by the context.
So the perception, the quality or the category that you have been taught that a thing has determines how you evaluate it and how your experience. Yeah, our conditioning, and we are strongly conditioned by school, by media, by our friends and parents and family, by various experiences we have, especially during childhood, growing up and like that. We are strongly conditioned to view things in a certain way. There's no such thing in this world as a naturally unconditioned person. People have to work on themselves in specific ways. And the Buddha, of course, gave the best method. Gave the best process for doing that. Because he takes it all the way out. To the point where I, mine, and self are shown to also be conditions that condition one for suffering. The other spiritual paths try to artificially make I and self eternal so that they never go away. But you can't do that. It's impossible. They make a transcendental category that you can't really experience.
No, you can wish for it. That's about the best you can do. And that gives you maybe some consolation. You feel consoled. But it's like somebody, it's like if you're crossing the railroad track and the gates are down and the bell is ringing and you're there in the middle of the tracks and somebody tells you, it's all right. They're just testing the gates. It gives you a feeling of consolation. And here comes a train. Wham!
It's like an assumption. You can build a nice big
house of cards
on top of it.
But ultimately it's going to collapse. Because it's not real. Old age and death is going to hit you just like the train. No matter what you believe about it, no matter what you have convinced yourself is true about it, still, if you were born, and if you're not born, I don't want to talk to you, okay? But if you were born, then you're going to die. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is.
And if you stick it under the rug, you'll suffer.
Yes. If you have to wait until it's obvious before you start dealing with it, it's going to be too late.
Yeah.
It's going to be too late. I'm sorry. You have to deal with this question while you're still young and strong and have your full faculties available, your full resources available. In fact, the recommended age to become a monk is like before 30, if possible, because you're still flexible enough to change. As for me, I was into this spiritual stuff from teenager.
Well, you kept pretty flexible. You're still pretty flexible.
Well, I had
to.
You
dropped everything when you understood that it wasn't real.
As soon as I saw that it was an illusion, I had to change my viewpoint. I mean, I couldn't just, go on and make believe that I hadn't seen what I had seen.
And you wanted to see. Most people don't want to see. That's why they don't see.
Of course I want to see. I want to see if the train is coming. I don't want to just close my eyes and believe that it's not going to happen.
No.
Huh?
I feel the same way, and probably our listeners do too, but most of the people in the world, they're like sitting down on the tracks having a picnic,
We call it, what is the Sanat called, the train crossing? The karma crossing or something like that. We were on the train one day going to Colombo, and some guy got hit by the train. Now, how can you get hit by a train? You have to be really, really
conditioned,
dense. Huh?
Intoxicated.
Maybe he was drunk.
Sedated.
I don't know.
But they're all drunk with this feeling of fine mind.
But somehow this poor old guy got hit by the train. And, he was a mess. I don't think he made it.
No.
I don't think he made it. But I
think he was already dead when they put him on the train.
Yeah. It was a really tragic thing. Because, here's all these people who are just trying to get to work in the morning. Keep up the status quo, pay the bills or whatever.
And suddenly they were reminded of death.
Yes.
The whole train was.
The poor guy next to me, he was going, oh no, this ruins my whole day, And I'm like, what, you mean you forgot you were going to die?
It's kind of silly, really. This ruins my whole day. It ruined his whole day, the guy who passed.
Yeah, the poor guy.
His day is ruined.
Now he has to take a new birth. The guy who's sitting
on the train's day is not ruined.
No, but what was ruined was that he was unable to maintain the fiction that his self was last forever. That's right. So you can have, all different kinds of religious beliefs or whatever. And I think to have religious faith is better than to have no faith at all.
Yeah.
But still, at some point, you're going to have to come to grips with the concept that you are going to be no more. That everything you think is I, mine, and self is going to go away. It can't be helped. So that is the fundamental fact that leads to the Buddha's teaching. Because like he says in that sutta that I posted this morning, that once you understand these things, do what has to be done. If everything is going to go away, and I and mine and everything is going to be finished, that implies something has to be done.
Yes.
So do it. Don't just sit there waiting for the train to come.
Don't just sit there in your objectless anxiety.
Oh boy. Well, that's another topic.
Well, it pertains to death.
Yes,
really.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
But people stick death under the rug so they don't know why they're anxious.
The real reason they're anxious is because everything that we think we are, our being, is based on a false premise. And we're afraid at any minute we could be found out, hauled before the judge and jury, and accused of being a phony. Because, as a matter of fact,
we are.
Yeah. Everything that we say we are, we're not really.
No.
It's just something we adopt, something we assume, something that we fabricate to keep up the appearance or to keep up the pretense of real existence in this world. But you can't have real existence in this world because it's all temporary. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anything that's limited by time, either in the past or in the future, is not real existence. It's not unconditioned existence. It's conditional existence. It really exists, but its existence is conditional, temporary.
Very temporary, yeah.
Yeah. So we should live with this awareness every moment, because then we will take the necessary actions to deal with it.
And try to reach the unconditioned state.
Yeah, but this is very difficult when you're just around conditioned people all the time. Or when you have been so heavily conditioned by your previous existence that you can't or don't want to look beyond it. Now, we're not talking to those people. We're talking to the people who are trying to get beyond it.
Yeah.
So, the way we see things depends on our point of view. Just like if we want to look at things from the point of view of fabrications, well, then perceptions, feelings, all of these things are part of it because they are part of the sense bases, which are also fabrications of the breath. So fabrications of the mind, the body, they're all fabrications, whichever way you look at it. But then when you want to look at things from the point of view of perception, then or contact, then things look differently. They're defined in terms of one another, still. But it's like you're turning it's like having a plastic globe, a transparent globe of the world, and you look at it from the point of view of the East, things look differently than if you look at it from the point of view of the West. It's still the same globe. Everything's in the same relation.
Yeah. Or like you're looking at an old watch and then you turn it around, you see the machinery inside.
Something like that. Yeah.
You get a clear view of what it really is.
So we're talking about the machinery inside. Other people are talking about the external view of life, appearance of life.
Their fabricated story.
Yeah. But we don't care very much for that. We want to see how it works. Why? So we can fix it. So we can unmock it, uncreate the fabrication, and come to the real being, the real individual.
Get out of the maze.
Yeah. So with that in mind, I'm going to continue with Wetimuni here. If we consider only one sense organ, then the corresponding external base would be whatever is not that sense organ. If I consider the eye, for example, then whatever is not the eye is what is seen by the eye. The eye cannot see itself.
No.
The nose cannot smell itself. The tongue cannot taste itself, and so on. Therefore, the corresponding perceptions are not entirely dependent on that sense organ. In other words, the thing has a condition in itself.
Independent of your sense organ.
Right. The wall is white. The door is red. The mosquito net is blue. And that has nothing to do with my eyes.
No.
My eyes are seeing that because they can be aware of that range of colors. But then he goes on to say something very interesting. It doesn't matter even if an individual is colorblind or partially deaf. Whatever color or sound he perceives, the thing, which is the external condition for whatever color or sound he does perceive, is external to his eye and ear. In other words, some people are colorblind. They can't see the difference between red and blue.
No.
That looks identical to them. Does that mean that now the thing is not red or blue?
No.
No. It's still, the thing itself is still has its condition. Just that he is incapable of distinguishing that condition.
His sense of sight doesn't determine the color of the door. The color of the door determines how he perceives it.
Exactly. One is cause and the other is effect. The percepts or sense objects are called external bases because those external things other than the six-based body, which are involved in contact, get involved in the existential structure only in terms of the percepts. So we don't really know things in themselves.
No.
This is a big debate in philosophy, by the way. And part of the part of the discussion around skepticism. That we do not know things, we cannot know things in themselves. We can only know how our senses and mind interpret them.
Rudolf Steiner would roll in his grave.
Poor Rudolf. Well, you see, all of these people who believe in an absolute, objective, external world are ultimately defeated, because even if there is such a thing, which is, as the skeptics say, subject to doubt, our experience of it is always going to be conditioned by our senses. Now, science tries its best to arrive at a definition of this objective external world, which is the same for everybody. But in fact, in actual practical experience, no two people experience the same world.
No. And the mystics who try to know the thing in itself, they're imagining. And they see it as some kind of eternal thing. They don't see that it's changing. And
well, this goes all the way back. This goes all the way back to Plato. He says, for example, if you look at this cup, and the top of the cup forms a circle, or an ellipse, depending on how you look at it, that somewhere in some kind of ideal space, there is a perfect form of a circle. And this form that we see in this object, which is manifest, is dependent upon the ideal form, which is unmanifest or virtual. So there's a virtual world which is ideal and perfect. And that is the world of God, the spiritual world, and all of this. And then there's our manifest world, which has these replicas or projections of that original ideal thing, which is not perfect.
An ideal world is like, it's a nice idea, but can you experience it?
No.
You can imagine it in your mind, but that doesn't make it real.
Right, and we can sit here and imagine the same ideal world, that doesn't make it real either.
No.
So everybody in the world could get together and imagine this ideal world full of perfect circles and squares and lines and planes and whatever. That doesn't make it real.
No.
It's still just a mental construct.
And whenever you try to manifest that thing in the real world, it might look perfect, but then it's going to change.
Yeah. I can make this perfect cup. It's perfectly round. Right? Well, where's it going to be in 100 years? It's going to be in pieces somewhere. So the percepts or sense objects are called external bases because those external things involved in contact get involved in the existential structure only in terms of the percepts. Thus, not only are there an I and I consciousness, there are also sights and things cognized by I consciousness. The same holds true for the other five senses. Cognize means to recognize something, to realize something. I look at this thing and I say, hey, that's a cup. That's cognized. Now, why is it cognized? I can go into the details. It has a circular top. It has a cylindrical shape. It has a solid bottom. It has a handle for picking it up and so on. And all those things put together make it a cup. Well, is a cup a thing in itself? Is there an ideal cup somewhere?
Is that what he's going to talk about now?
No, he's
the
not.
The intention of the thing.
We're talking about that now.
But I just want to say about the last point. We don't rule out an ideal world, but we're not concerned with the metaphysical system and other worlds that you can't experience.
Right. We are ultimately not an ontological set of ideas. The Buddha's teaching is an ontic practice. And the difference is, as we went over in our recent video on realizing no self, ontological means a more or less ideal set of categories. Okay? Cups versus saucers versus spoons versus forks. And everything goes in its nice little neat category, and that's all wonderful. But
unless you can realize it in your experience.
In real life, right, in actual present time. If I can't recognize something as a cup because of its function, then I don't know what a cup is.
It's useless to speculate about all these ideal things.
Somebody might come up with a cup that's square. In fact, we have some, don't we? We have a couple of cups that are square. So if I'm convinced that a cup has to be cylindrical or round, then if I come across this square cup, I'm going to be in trouble. Because it functions as a cup, yet it doesn't fit into the definition of a cup in my ontology. See? So ontological thinking is always a kind of inferential reasoning, going from particulars to the general.
You may draw on an ontological system, but you have to verify it in your own experience.
Right. If I can use something as a cup, hey man, it's a cup. I can use the palm of my hand as a cup if necessary. Or a can or a bottle or something else, that isn't really a cup. According to the definition. So, of course, we're giving now a very simplistic explanation of the difference between ontological and ontic. But when it comes to consciousness and experience and things like that, that's where the rubber meets the road. Because if I have an ontological limitation, if, for example, I see everything as being created by a God who exists in some ideal world, okay, and I have to explain everything to myself in those terms, then when I have a moment of lucid self-consciousness where I realize that, oh, actually, all these things that I think are real aren't, I won't have any place to file that. Because no place in that theistic ontology for a moment of actual self-consciousness. Therefore, even if I have one by some absolute fluke, I won't be able to. Right, I won't be able to give it its proper value. I won't recognize it. Recognize it. I won't cognize it. I won't get it.
No.
Okay, I won't get the joke. So I'll think instead there's something wrong. Or something just happened to me that was really weird. I felt like I wasn't here. I think there's something wrong, or it's a problem, or I just forget it. I don't recognize it. It doesn't get filed anywhere. It goes in the trash can. So if our ontology, our background knowledge of what reality is and what life is supposed to be, doesn't have a place for these experiences, such as contact, fabrication, false self, I-making, mind-making, and all these things we're talking about. If you don't have any place in your ontology, you won't see it. It won't exist for you, even though it's going on right in front of your eyes.
So if your ontology is based on unexamined assumptions, you're in trouble.
Well, everybody's ontology is based on unexamined assumptions. That's the problem. Well, we assume there's an I.
The Buddha's teaching is verifiable in your experience.
The Buddha's teaching is, yes. Others are not.
No.
Like if you say to the theist, can you verify the existence of God or heaven or the soul? They can't.
No.
They can give all kinds of indirect proofs. And I used to know all of them by heart.
Yeah. And some of them are pretty convincing.
They are. Because, it's just like a person can be convicted of a crime on circumstantial evidence. Right? It's possible. When there is like no doubt at all. But as long as we can't perceive something directly, there's always going to be some doubt. Okay, and it's in that doubt that the skeptic lives. The skeptic in us and the skeptic in everyone. So we're saying that this skepticism should be encouraged. In fact, it should be encouraged to the point where we begin to even doubt skepticism.
And not only the theist, also the scientist, so-called. Like you should... The Big Bang, for example, it's a hypothesis.
Nobody will ever be able to verify it experimentally. It's not possible. Yet, they treat it as an assumption that's true.
Yeah.
And base so many other things on it.
And it's so true that when evidence comes up to the contrary, they disregard that evidence.
Yeah. They throw it in the trash.
Science has become another religion.
It has. And anybody who doesn't believe in their particular religious interpretation is blackballed. And like Alfven, not given telescope time because he has an alternate idea of astrophysics, alternate theory of astrophysics. So he couldn't get telescope time to prove it. Because, of course, it's wrong.
Oh, of course. Because many positions and a lot of money and power depends on it.
Right.
Many selves.
Yes. So because of these unquestioned assumptions, even when somebody has a better idea, they can't present it. We think the Buddha has a better idea. But because of all of the previously existing powerful positions that are based on fabrications, the Buddha doesn't get to present his idea. Even in most Buddhist temples, you cannot hear the Buddha's original teaching.
No.
You can only hear some interpretation of it.
Can't even see a monk meditating.
That's right, because they don't. Yet every time you see a picture of the Buddha, what's he doing? He's sitting meditating. Why don't the monks meditate? Beats me, man. I meditate as much as I can.
They're busy maintaining their egos.
Yes, maintaining the temple and their positions. And
because
so
they're not even given the whole teaching. They don't know the doctrine of no self.
Right. And these are monks. So what to speak of the congregation? They're just coming to get some blessings so that they get material prosperity. And the same is going on in the churches and the mosques and all these other religious places. People are making religion to get, because they experience, it gives them good karma. Why? Because they're giving something. They're sacrificing something. And this is something that generates good karma. See?
Unfortunately, it's also like a confluence of resources. So it's a place people want to go to get a position of power.
Yeah, you can network really effectively.
This happens in Buddhist temples and in Vaishnava traditions and Catholic Church, in all religions, in all hierarchies, really.
Yeah. So what the Buddha is saying, if you go deep into the Buddha's teaching, is that all hierarchies are fabrications. All ideas of position and power and influence are fabrications.
Sure are.
Yeah, all of these different ego games that we play, dominance and submission and all this stuff, this is all just a bunch of hogwash. It's a useless waste of time. He's saying, in other words, the Buddha is so profoundly revolutionary that no power-possessing person in their right mind is going to let it come out. So what we see is a huge endeavor and resources dedicated to perverting the Buddha's teaching, posting false quotes attributed to the Buddha, things that he never said, or omitting things that he did say.
These two are slandering the Buddha.
Yes.
The people who say that he said something he didn't say, or the people who don't accurately tells everything he said.
Right.
Or the essence of what he said.
Here's a good example. That post that comes up again and again from Kalama Sutta, that don't rely on scriptures or teachers or traditions or anything. When you know in yourself that something is good and leads to
skillful results,
then accept it and enter into it. But they always cut out the middle part where the Buddha says, when something is praised by the wise, take it up and enter into it and make it a part of you. They always cut out that part. They only leave the part that says, basically, just do whatever you like. Think accept whatever you think is cool, you know. And that's the way the quote is presented. And it's used to justify that kind of thinking. But that's not what the Buddha said.
No, and often they also sneak in the assumption of a self in that quote.
Yeah. Whatever you think is good. But that's completely against what the Buddha's overall philosophy is.
It's not what you think is good, it's experiencing
what is actually good.
What is observed in your own experience.
Yeah, and praised by the wise. So these are the criteria. And now we're running out of time. We're way over time. I wonder how many people actually listen to these things all the way through. If you do, and you hear this, leave us a comment.
That would be cool.
Let's see if anybody actually comments. Anyway, thank you for being with us. And tomorrow we'll go into more about contact, phassa, and the different percepts.